Well, deepest, darkest Ohio, somewhere, I'm assuming, for BJ this week. Hopefully, it's been a worthwhile weekend. What's up? Darkest Ohio, somewhere, I'm assuming,
Not much.
for
I'm
BJ
good.
this week.
Yeah, I'm just a
Hopefully,
little bit north of
it's been a worthwhile
Indianapolis
weekend. What's
right
up?
now.
Oh,
I got up fairly
not
early, I
much.
guess, following a sort of a late night last night. um, with going to the Wisconsin victory party, and we had a blast. It was a fun weekend for me, and um, being at the ABCA convention, seeing a lot of old friends and making some new ones. So it's really good.
Yeah, December's a real education month. We had our equivalent of CAP or something like it last weekend. People wonder what coaches do. We kind of retool or refresh or or catch up with each other in some way, shape, or form in December. Quite a lot, actually. So that's been fun, and we're going to get a different perspective today. We're going to be talking with Brian. I'm bringing him in here, and there he is.
Hi.
We're going to get a different perspective today. Welcome aboard, BJ. You know Brian a lot longer than I have. We Brian and I met, I think, on one of these when we were just playing with the technology a little bit way back when, before we got started. BJ, you know Brian a lot longer than I have. Brian and I
Yeah.
met, I think, on one of these when we were just
My
playing with
thought
the
in having
technology
Brian on
way
was
back when before we got
we got a
started.
couple of good topics. Um, from social media platform, and then also coaching outside of the United States. But Brian, I guess before we get too deep into that, let's get your kind of your background, how you got into volleyball, and what you're doing in volleyball right now.
Well, so I was born and raised in the country of Panama as a U.S. sort of expat family. My parents were both DoD employees, which I am now, and I'll explain that in a second. Um, and did my student teaching in DoDIA, which is the Department of Defense um, school system for military kids. And I'm currently in the country of Germany at a U.S. Army base. And I spent 5 years at a U.S. Air Force base in South Korea, which was an experience. I actually played volleyball in high school, along with tennis and swimming and American football. So grew up around the sport, was lucky enough to be a boy playing volleyball in ninth grade. Fell in love with it. Was asked in Korea to coach the women's team. I asked, my first question was, don't you have a boys team? I've never really, been into coaching girls, but they said, no, we already have one of those. Actually, they did have a boys team. So I reluctantly accepted the girls' high school head coaching position. And I guess the rest is history. So I am been here in Germany for 13 years. Also the athletic director at our school here for the last year, which has been a big challenge, head coaching and being AD. So it's been a little tough with COVID and all those other things that everybody else is dealing with. But I'm learning a lot, and still enjoy coaching and still enjoy learning, but I feel like I probably know less than I did 18 years ago when I first started sometimes. But miss the game for sure, and miss seeing all of the folks there, and haven't been to an ABCA convention in a few years, and watching it vicariously here through the internet was cool, but man, nothing like being there. So looks like it was an awesome experience that happy to chat about.
Yeah, it was a great weekend.
Yeah.
Very fun. Hey, Steve, I'm getting an
Yeah, I'm
echo.
getting a ton of
Do you hear
feedback as
that on
well.
your end?
Sorry, that's why it's
Yeah,
hard
I
for me to
think it's.
concentrate.
It sounds to me like it's in your background, BJ. It's been kind of the, it sounds like crowd noise almost. People noise from wherever you are. So that's
Well, I'm
what
getting
I'm
mine
hearing.
is getting probably about a 5 second delay, I would say,
Ah,
from my end.
well, well,
Not sure why.
let's. Yeah, I'm not sure why as well. I'll play
Have a
with
pretty
some
strong
things in the
internet
background
connection,
here.
but you never know.
Yeah, no, I'll play with things in the background, but BJ, I think some of the background, the noise is your environment there a little bit, because I heard it when we were chatting earlier. I'll play with things in the background,
Okay.
but BJ, I think some
Yeah,
of the
it's the only
background
thing that's
noise
kind of bothersome is that echo. It's like Brian said, it's about a 5 second or so delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only thing that's
I think I can fix
kind
that.
of bothersome is that echo. It's like Brian said, it's about a 5 second or so delay. Yeah. I suppose somebody should be talking while we.
Yeah, we could do that.
I can give you some more background. So I
fixed.
currently teach English and social studies here on this this Army base, and I've been here for the last 13 years, as I said before. So
Cool. What was, before we get too much into social media stuff? What's the driver for you being outside the country? I know you love it, and how. I guess it's a couple of questions, but let's first. What's your philosophy of that, Ben? What's motivating you to continue to do that?
well, I kind of really is all I know to a degree as an American living overseas. Like I said, born and raised in this environment on a military base. My dad was ROTC at Purdue, and mom went over, I think, in 1972 or 73 to Panama. And I just grew up so heavily in it. When I went off to college, I've been in the States, of course, I'm as an American and visited during the summertime and stuff, but just living in the States was very difficult for me, being born and raised overseas, frankly. I love being an American, and I love everything about it, but it was tough to kind of just, I don't know, kind of miss the diversity that we kind of experience living this life is a real different one. We see so many different things and get to meet so many different people that I kind of longed for that life. So I applied to be a teacher here after my student teaching. I did that in college, but just really loved serving the military as well and being able to be a teacher. These kids don't get a whole lot of experiences, and I myself growing up, in a DoD school, and I actually walked on to play football at Texas Tech, and I was kind of a bright-eyed, Dodia kid here. I thought, I'll go off and, give it a shot. And it was great, but I was definitely underprepared for something like that. And really, I should have ended up at like a D3 or D2 or somewhere a little lower. I mean, it was a great experience to go meet some of the people and work with some of the coaches I got to work with. But I really started thinking about what these kids needed, to be successful at whatever the next level would be, either academically or athletically. So I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to be able to give back and do a lot of that too, while, still getting a chance to serve and do something I really enjoy. So being around these military connected kids is a real pleasure, because they just don't get access to a lot of resources that maybe a lot of other people might.
What we've talked about this a little bit before, but it always interests me. You sometimes don't know what your roster is going to be like. You have kids that are in and out. The military is constantly moving their people around, depending on who they need where, or promotions, or whatever it is. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so most coaches talk about rebuilding their programs. I refer to it as regrouping each year. So, literally I think sometimes I'll even share with some of you, I know BJ, with our little group, with where some of our kids are from, and it's literally not, and none of the kids are from any one place. Our kids look like our military, and they move around just like their moms and dads do. And that's probably the hardest thing, is that they don't know where they're going to be either year to year, just like their moms and dads don't, and so, every year we just try to do the best we can with what we've got. Sometimes we'll get local kids, like some of the teachers' kids and things, like people like myself, who are maybe get a chance to be here a little bit longer. We get a little bit of that, but probably 60 to 80% of my roster is inconsistent. Like this year, for example, we didn't have a season last year because of COVID. It was fully canceled, and we were going to have a pretty good team. And so this 2021 was almost like starting completely anew as a coach, as a program. We won one match all season. It was a real struggle. We fought and we worked hard. We had great coaching staff. I mean, great kids, great parents, all those things. But we literally started from scratch as if we'd never seen a volleyball before, and that was a real eye opener, and just, on how difficult what we do overseas really is. And it continues to be a challenge in many ways.
That's really interesting. It's in my school we're a little bit like that. Years ago, I had an Air Force kid, and kind of came to us. I had a team of 14, and she got bumped from a club and came in, and she was our 15th and least skilled, and helping her through that. And then she was headed for Japan after the season was over. So I have no idea how well she's doing. I wish I did. We hadn't kept in touch, but it's funny, even at the high school level where the sport's not very popular, which is kind of my gym. You're out there banging a drum trying to get kids to come out, and it's zero skill. We've been fortunate this year to have some early open gym time to work on things, but when you start from scratch, it's kind of interesting to learn how to get up that learning curve faster, and you must be an expert at it. So if you've got some ideas about how to get them up the learning curve faster, I'm all ears.
Well, I mean, I'm a Kessel disciple, I guess. Just trying to that mantra of getting better faster. Continuing
Yeah.
to look at how to maximize those reps in the gym. This year, I had a great staff too, and because I was AD, I wasn't able to do as much on the court stuff 24/7. So really trying to just beat the bushes, finding help as much as possible. We try to run a great program. We actually, unfortunately, had to cut a few kids, even though we only have a school of about 400 and we have a JV. So we carried 34 kids this year, which is a lot, obviously. So, there's no secret except to just maximize your court time. We serve and pass a ton. All those opportunities to get rep. Probably my biggest Kessel thing is if you think you're serving and passing enough, you're not, so making sure you're doing those things and always being instead of the third contact on something, being the second, so many coaches do tons of wash drills and stuff. Of course we do that, but that was the big thing where I send the free ball to the losing side and they send it to the winning side. So if you win, you get to read that free ball and then do something with it, which I think has helped a ton in getting us better faster. But that's all. And, like I said, this felt like starting from scratch for me. I really had to rethink, just what are our core values? How do we continue to build those things? How do you build a new team from complete scratch when everybody the year before wasn't there? We only had 3 kids that returned from that 2019 season. And we did very well, but only 1 kid on the varsity, from that season. So, it was like, what do you do with your culture when you have an opportunity to rebuild the entire thing from scratch? So I thought a lot about that, and good or bad, right? So we actually are fortunate to have a sports psychologist that we consult with that we actually presented at the AVCA in 2019 about that and how cool that was. And she helped us even long distance this year. She moved to the Netherlands. So, just with COVID and being able to do things through Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all these different things, Google Meets, and just how to get creative with things that we probably wouldn't have done 2 or 3 years ago. So, being willing and open to having access to resources from all over the world.
Awesome. I think actually gave me a couple ideas just from that discussion, and we had some. Kessel was here a couple weeks ago, or last weekend actually. So that was fun to catch up with John, and Marwan was there. We had a good crew, and they brought in some interesting folks as well. We learned a lot of stuff that was off the court. Of course, the on the court stuff was hilarious because I am not very quick anymore, and we had a small class, so everybody was like, "Oh, I got to go and play, huh? Okay, let's see how that's gonna look." So, anyway.
They had Rob Gray was out there, Brian, for the sessions
Cool.
in Arizona from Perception Action. I think it's probably good I didn't go. I had to talk to Zeroff. I don't think I would have ever left his side.
Yeah, he's fascinating,
It's
really
an interesting
fascinating
dude.
guy.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about rebuilding, I went. My head coach and one of our assistants, presented at AVCA, and they were talking about rebuilding a program as well. And really, I think most of us through this COVID thing have sort of had to, retool, rebuild, change a lot of cultural things. I went through it with them, but until she really talked about what it took to retool a team, I guess I hadn't I hadn't thought about it that much, but it's similar to what you're going through.
Well, and I don't know if maybe some other coaches have talked about this too. I'm sure shared at the AVCA, but just the emotional toll that this has taken on kids in general. Every single one of us, just in our high school group, we're just talking about how many breakdowns emotionally the kids were having. Just we felt they were just so much more just out of tune with their ability to handle some of the emotional tolls of just playing sports and being around people. And you guys are nodding your heads a little bit too. Maybe you experienced some of that.
Yeah, at our end, our AD, I'm constantly pestering her for gym time, and so she's like, "Oh, here he comes again." But we talked about it a little bit ago, and she said, she's part of the administration as well. She has she's part-time AD. So she said our biggest thing is every one of us on the senior staff spends almost our entire day suspending kids because they don't know how to be in the class anymore. They don't
We
know
have a
how to
huge
behave.
problem, with that right now. Huge.
Yeah.
A lot of
And I
drug
don't think
use.
Yeah,
A lot of things going on. And sports are that void, And so I think if you have I'm a part-time AD, I'm a teacher full-time. I have full class load as well, and coach in the fall. And just we see it constantly with the kid, and the parents have been tremendous. Like they've been incredibly supportive. Maybe we all know what school is more than just a brick and mortar. It's a whole culture in itself. And so the parents have been incredibly supportive, and maybe want us to do more than we're doing, and are allowing us a lot more leeway, I think, than maybe they would in the past.
Out of curiosity, what's working? As you're trying to get through this and get kids back on track, what's working?
I mean, for me, it's just been a tremendous level of empathy. Just really talking to them, talking to the parents about how much we care for their kids, and just trying to build that trust continuously, over and over with the parents, with the administrators, with we all kind of forgot how important that was a little bit, just because we were remote and doing different things, and you take some of that for granted, and it really takes work. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have in your head, and how much people think you care. You have to let people know how much you care all the time, and that's a job. That's work, and it's been a lot of work.
Hmm.
Just really
Well,
working at building those relationships.
well, I wish you well with it as we're trying to get through. We're just getting ready to start the season, and building that has been challenging. I've been fortunate. My guys seem pretty well together, but I guarantee you that's just on the surface. So I got to work on getting a little bit beneath that.
Well, probably the best thing that we did with our sports psychologists is that we developed this sort of system. I guess I could send you our graphic, but all teams I think sit and they talk about core values and like what's important to us, this sort of thing. But we took probably 2 to 3 active sessions during the season. An hour here, an hour there, before we even really started to define what those top 5 sort of core values were going to be. And then we have this sort of goofy chart that we create that has a 10, 8, 6, or it sort of goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it kind of meets in the middle with each one of those core values sort of listed around in a circle. And throughout practice, we pull over during timeouts and we move the balls around. So like one of them was respect, and things like that. So how are we on focus right now? And a lot of times it was 4. Like, well, what do we need to do to get it be a 10? And we do that constantly. So it was not just talking about our core values, but a way to measure them, minute by minute, timeouts during matches. It became a real core part of our teaching, and something we could anchor to.
You become a master of the open-ended question then for the kids.
Yeah, for sure. Putting it in their hands, they decided on these, with a little guidance. The more, as we know, the more involvement they can have in choosing these things, then the more invested they'll be in deciding what our culture should look like.
Yeah, we're all playing sort of amateur psychologists right now. As we sift through this, um, just getting back to somewhat normal. I mean, even the convention, the reminder is always there. Everybody's wearing masks, and it's a constant reminder that there's still something that's just a little different. that's a little bit off. And I think, exactly what you said. It's a lot of work. It takes a mental toll. I know I've been asking people. Our head coach is very much into culture, and we're bugging Mick all the time about how to deal with various things, and it's been tough, and it's probably even tougher, when you're constantly making that cultural change with having new people and the coming and going of the type of team that you have. Um,
So what has been successful
I
for
don't know
you
if you have
guys
one.
under challenges?
Well,
Did you catch that
I
last part?
think I
Yeah,
think the
sorry.
biggest thing is being honest. You know, um, we had a lot of people just going through the motions and saying, that they felt empathy. They were being, saying they were being vulnerable, and they we weren't. We got to the end of our COVID season, and we all sort of said, yeah, we're just being, it's almost fraudulent about how we felt, and we got a lot more honest with each other about that because we had to. You know, it was holding us back, so
Hmm.
there were some days with some tears and definitely some hard discussions, but it had to be done. I think that's probably the best way I can say it is just being honest with ourselves and with each other.
Well, this was my most losing season in the history of my volleyball career. 1 in 15 or 16, something like that. But I had a tremendous amount of personal growth just in what my expectations were on a daily basis. It sucked not winning. It really hurt all the time. It never gets any easier. But the fact that the parents and kids could see how hard we were working towards just getting better every day. And the comments, of course, were nice. That what the team looked like at the beginning was night and day to what we ended with, and we were pushing some of the top teams, and all those trite phrases. But I really had to reassess my version, what my version of success was going to be, because I knew coming in this was going to be rough, end result wise. So it really forced me to take a hard look at what was important to me, and how I could look at myself in the mirror every day and keep doing this.
Well, and you
Gets
guys
me.
have a tough travel schedule too. I mean,
Yeah, so
you're
we
you
go to
travel
we
much more like a
travel
college
to
team.
yeah, we travel like a college team. We do. So this year they shut us down, so we were only in Germany. But often we'll travel to many, Italy and other foreign countries. So we were in, but even within Germany, our bus rides are 4 to 6 hours one way often, to go somewhere. And like, so for example, we had to navigate some of our unvaccinated kids that were on the team, and then Germany has different rules than our command structure, which is based on mostly CDC guidelines. And so, like, just stopping at McDonald's, we're having to, all right, okay, you can't go in. So what do you want? And okay, you can go in and you can order, but you have to. We're all wearing these masks. I mean, it just it becomes just that part of it. Not even playing volleyball, and the kids had to play in masks on the court the entire season. So in practice, in matches, the whole 9 yards. It was just challenging physically, as much as mental, which also takes then a mental toll, I think, on all of us. So we really had to dial back things a lot more days off here and there, more time with the counselors, just, more time for ourselves. We had to be honest with each other, personal stressors, things like that. So it was a roller coaster. Still is.
Yeah, I think my perspective is a little different because I coming up and still coached a lot of twos and threes teams. So,
Mhm.
I remember a parent getting, giving me grief at the end of the season. He goes, "You told us we'd probably only win 30 or 40% of our matches, and we won 50% of our matches. So you lied to us." I'm like, "Hey, what can I tell you? We're a threes team and we go to tough tournaments. So it's going to be, a learning process." So I guess I started off with a different definition of what success was and have tried to refine it. But that's my transition this year. I think this year we have enough skill that we've got to up that expectation a little bit. And keeping it from becoming about wins because you don't control them as much as you think, but of really doing the most with and for each other. That's going to be kind of the message of the year, and it's going to be interesting to see how well it goes.
Cool.
Let's switch into talking about we've dabbled about around the topic of volleyball coaches and trainers, the Facebook page that you started. Um, Tell us about kind of the beginning of that, how you got up and running, and what your vision of it was then, and what it is now.
So I think it was like 2013, I want to say, something like that. And Facebook groups were just coming online, and they were looked like a cool way to connect. And I thought they would become a thing. Looks turns out we're pretty right about that. But I was kind of poking around at some of the existing groups, and the one I kind of was in was a strength and conditioning group. It was just mostly, I'm a strength and conditioning coach as well. And then was looking at some of the rules and things that were sort of going on, and realized that you got to have some rules and foundation things in order to kind of keep things moving a little bit. So I knew I couldn't do this by myself. But I actually asked if you know Chuck Ray. He's the head coach at Winthrop, and I think AD maybe. But I think he's moving into some of those things as well. But we started pretty low. Just had a few members there, maybe 100 or 200, and the conversation was engaging and was working out well. And then all of a sudden it gets to 1,000, and then 2,000, and 3,000. And Chuck said, "Hey man, I don't know if I can really handle a lot of this. I got young kids and full-time coaching responsibilities." And so one of the more prominent members, everyone knows Pete Wong, I'm sure, sort of VCT famous as well. And I said, "Pete, hey, can you give me a hand with this? I don't think I can handle this by myself." And he was more than willing and had some great ideas, and it just sort of snowballed from there. And we get like Katie Charles, and I heard her on podcasts and stuff, and said, "Hey, would you like to help out?" And of course, BJ and Dan Mickle and even John Kessel became one of our admins, and just kind of philosophically, that was always something I really cared about, being a connector of people. That's something quite a bit, and just connecting people with each other. That was really important to me. And even one of my friends who started camps here described me as a force multiplier. I always like it because it's a military term, where the sum of its parts is greater than its parts, right? So just that idea that social media could do that, could really be a connector of people, beyond just 1+1 or 2+2, that we could really do some cool and amazing things. Of course, we have some downsides to that too, but really the opportunity to connect people and grow.
What are we? We're around 25,000 members now, and
I think
from all over the place.
24,000.
So, what are things that you hope going forward for VCT? Kind of, it's been COVID's affected it as well, and what kind of things are you hoping as it moves forward?
Yeah, well, I think we really shifted our focus to civil conversation, civil discourse. That's something we've really tried to refocus things on. I mean, social medias are always going to get things a little bit out of hand, but still being an agent of to maybe throw some opinions that aren't necessarily fully popular, as long as they're being civil doing that. I think initially people were like, "Well, let's have a convention and let's do all these great things," and we made T-shirts. That was it's fun to be able to connect with people, but I really don't know totally where it can go. I kind of have taken a step back a little bit, and what my expectations are from it. And I still get a lot out of seeing people connect and meeting in person. And again, I just often think about what would I want from a social connection. And for me, it was just continuing to develop little projects and connecting people around the world. One of our members went to Africa with a connection she made on VCT, right? So you just think about some of those cool things. I didn't think that was possible. Next thing you know, they're on a mission trip to Africa with suitcases of volleyballs and uniforms. So and I'm a history teacher as well. So uh, one of my big lessons is that you don't really know kind of where ideas are going to go. You may have an idea, you may stand up for something. All of a sudden, things start to snowball, and maybe they get a little bit out of your control. So I'm kind of hoping that happens actually. Maybe hopefully in a good way, but where people do offshoots and talk to me about some cool idea that they want to do, or next thing you know, they're in Dubai doing something cool, or whatever, or meeting some new person they never thought they'd get a chance to meet. I don't know. I'm just open to continue to figure these things out, but I do know I want it to be civil. We as the world is a complicated place right now, and as long as we're good to each other, we can grow the game together.
I'm muting every once in a while just to keep the noise down in the background for you
Yeah.
guys. Where I guess how do we maintain that civility? I know you and I have talked about that some. What's the easiest way for
I think continue to have rules and norms help. Every time someone comes up with something that I don't necessarily like, I like to tweak the rules a little bit just so I can. And Facebook has continually um, modified kind of what their things are. And actually, one of the Facebook um, folks have contacted us because our VCT site is so high traffic. There's so much engagement in the group that Facebook, emails me and has messages, and they talk. I mean, they're actually learning from us as well about how to increase engagement because our thing is so good. I just think all these studies with social media that the negative stuff gets more traction than positive. And to me that I would like to reverse that a little bit with VCT. Is continue to point some of the things. Of course, we all like the outlandish headlines or the news of some coach doing something they weren't supposed to or whatever, but like that mission trip to Africa, to Zimbabwe. That's the cool stuff. That's the stuff I want to continue to push forward, and finding ways to highlight the really cool thing. Maybe a thing of the week, and these things take management. They take a lot of effort, and time to really put into it. But it almost becomes kind of a wiki, I guess, where the admins are just there to kind of balance things a little bit. And if you have a positive environment within the group, that the group kind of takes over that, and then you just kind of stand back and manage some of the conversations, and hopefully allow the group to take over in a positive way.
I think one of the things that I'd love Facebook to do, not necessarily the group to do, is give us better, the interface to me. And again, I'm not an avid Facebook user, but it's pretty clunky. I mean, you want to do a search, the stuff you find, or just finding your own posts, and all of that is just weird, not logical or whatever. And you can manage it, but you get that person who says, well, if you just do a search on this, you'll find all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, that's true. But, do we do that in everyday life? You're sitting there and, hey, honey, where's my, do you remember where that screwdriver is? And she could say, well, where the screwdrivers are. Go look there first, kind of stuff. And we do that in normal conversation all the time. So I always enjoy the ones where it's like, well, just go look for this. Like, if somebody will jump in and help me out, why go on an expedition when I can, there's all these guides available that I can just go, hey, where's this? And I think it's,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, well, and we try to remember what it was like when you first became a starting coach, right? And you were nervous,
Yeah.
and you didn't know who to ask or what questions to ask, and you were always afraid to look dumb. And so we had a little bit of that going on where we were squashing people for asking, questions that we thought were dumb, and then we try to get rid of that sort of culture. And like, if you just don't want to comment, just scroll on by, But we all need to remember what it was like when we didn't know anything, and how
Yeah.
vulnerable we were in that moment, where we could be crushed, or we could go on to be a great coach and help kids.
Yeah, that was one of the things we were trying to do when we started this, was to get some younger or newer coaches, not younger, newer coaches, who need a little bit of help on with us, and that's gone kind of slowly. And the thought was, well, we'd have people watching, and they would chime in. Well, we have one or two people watch each week, and we might get up to four or five, and and it's but it's still been the rewatches are there, and people can take from it what they will. And the cool thing at least for me, and I'm assuming for BJ as well to an extent anyway, is the learning we get and the connection we get with really interesting folks. So that's been fun. But, we're open to ideas on where we can take this so it can be more of service, especially to newer coaches who are like, I don't know, what's a stack? How's that work? And like, I was.
Well, we always talk a lot about just mentorship, in general.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it could go, is maybe even where people are willing to have a three-way conversation like we are, with a mentee type of person, someone who is vulnerable, asking questions, just a sort of an AMA type thing, where and then people who can watch later might learn something from those questions where they feel vulnerable enough. And then the multiplier effect of just helping one person through that, even though it doesn't have the views or all these things that we're looking for,
Right.
to me can be exponential. Builds your personal brand as someone who's helpful. Because I think the biggest challenge is, we're proudest of our players who go on maybe to coach club or, whatever, after they leave your program, and those are super cool. But what about that person, in India, who would here you are having a great conversation. They have a lot of respect for USA volleyball folks, and wow, wouldn't that be cool to be able to have a conversation with someone, and they take something and go to their group, and it was based on that conversation you had. I think that's the potential and the power that we have, not just down the street, but around the world.
Yeah. Oh, I do have one quick question, Brian. Do you call mine in your gym?
Not anymore.
Okay.
So we used to. We changed that a little bit. So we just said, we expect you to be where it should be. We want communication happening, but not necessarily mine.
Yeah, BJ, Jim's conversation was great to meet Jim Keane, and he walked us through that thinking. That was pretty fun.
Well, and it's rare outside of the United States to have somebody calling the ball in that way. I think somewhere we got started in the U.S. doing that. I don't know who originated that idea, but some ways I think it's held us back. Another conversation for another day. Um, what's the value you've seen so far, Brian, in the platform? Like what's changed in volleyball because of our group?
Wow. Big question. Wow. Well, I don't know. I just see, again, it's the comments from the new people. Just when you think you're not doing anything, there's so many comments about like, wow, this group saved me, or I talked to this person that said you have to join this group. They're so awesome. Those things are, to me, are huge. Just again, the newbies that come in and want something. They're grasping on, they're drowning, and they're don't know where to start, and nobody's reaching out to them, and everybody wonders why coaches leave and why you know referees leave or whatever, because everyone is looking to belong to something. We're all longing to belong to something. And if VCT can provide a little bit of that, I'll tell you, it's changed my life tremendously. I went out to Southern California like 10 years ago, and I reached out to some of my Facebook friends and, hey, I would love to connect with you. And I was in Manhattan Beach, and nobody, I couldn't find anybody, really, that was willing to even come say hi. But I feel like if I put some VCT feelers out there, man, you can come watch my practice tomorrow. And we've done that. Like, look at all the friends I've made. You two. I wouldn't have had any of these people in my life if it weren't for VCT. And just the connections that our sport brings. I think that's the super cool part. People wanting to connect at AVCA. Hey, I saw your comments online, and you meet at the socials events. I get a lot of that when I go to the in-person events. Especially from people who quote lurk. And some are some pretty famous people who lurk in the background on a lot of these conversations, and they're like, man, I learned a lot from that. I just can't comment because of who they are. you probably get a little bit of that too. But so it's sometimes you don't even know some of the effects you're having on some of these folks. But it's been pretty cool.
When you're a nobody, it's easier to speak a little bit in our group.
Right.
Like me. I mean, nobody really knows who I am, so it's easier to speak up. But if you were, you know, if you were somebody that was, at the national championship or in the national championship last night, it's tough to get out and really comment about what you're doing because so many people are looking at you.
Right.
Well, you're known a little bit, BJ. At least Eric
Yeah,
out
you
here
are.
in Arizona knows you. So we got to chat about that last time around. So
Old Hodgson, yeah, great person. He is
You know,
not on
he's-
Facebook.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
he is an amazing connector, but a Luddite when it comes to technology. Marwan was trying to get him to convince him about Apple and some of the just to think about a Mac, and he's like, it was no, I will never do that. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
But yeah.
no, he's great. He is on WhatsApp, so he'll respond quickly on WhatsApp. And he sends voice memos on WhatsApp a lot, so he's pretty good there. But no Facebook for Eric.
He lurks. He's out
lurks,
there.
yeah.
Once in a while, he'll say something. Yeah, he lurks out there a little bit.
Although he
Yeah.
did, I think, create
He's a
a
good
Facebook
dude. He's got a
account where
podcast
he
as
can
well.
watch what's going on. Yeah, he does. He did create a little account, but not as himself. He's out there.
So
You were
if
talking
you think,
about the
Yeah, go ahead.
engagement. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
I just was wondering what if you thought about one thing you've done in the last year that's been surprisingly good in whatever, from a connection standpoint, from a in the gym standpoint, one either revelation or something that you go, that was useful. What would that be in the last year, if anything?
Like conversation wise from VCT or just in general?
Just in general, I mean, VCT's part where we share that sort of thing, and certainly about VCT would be great. But just something that you go, yeah, that got me thinking differently.
Well, any of the conversations, the questions particularly on VCT about something new that's happening, like maybe how the men's game is changing the women's game. Having some questions about that and thinking, yeah, we should use a back row attack a little more. Or just like scoring systems. I remember that being a great conversation for me personally, where just being creative with the scoring systems. John Kessel always talks about, like, why do you keep coming to my talks? Like, you've heard this like 10 times. It's like, yeah, but I always get a little something like that. And half of it, because it's like drinking from a fire hose with him. You might hear 50 things and you've only done 3, and then the 10 things you forgot, you learned about again when you went to it the 11th time. So there's a little bit of that, and I think even in VCT there's some of that where you're like, oh yeah, and really, I mean, why do we go to the AVCA convention too? There's nothing like being there in person. Yeah. You can have all these online things, and you can do stuff online, and your friends do stuff, trainings online, and those are all great. But there's nothing like, meeting in person and having a chat and putting a name to the face. Like meeting Pete for the first time was just super cool. We felt like best friends. I think some of that stuff is just, and here we are, maybe some of them I haven't met yet, and I still feel like they're super close. So I think those moments are great.
Yeah, I think VCT's in a way a lot like, I was watching Eric work last week, and he's such a connector. He's so good at it. It comes naturally. And I'm like, that is not me. But it's one of those things where you go, I like to kind of sit down with my teams and with people I work with too, and just go, what are the gifts? Every one of them has gifts. What are they? We got to figure out how to use those. And Eric's really good at that. I think VCT does a good job of that.
Well, we've been working harder at it. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't even think we know what we want to be, but I've thought a lot about what we don't want to be, and maybe that's more important sometimes.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me that I've noticed about that group is that even if there are people that don't agree with something, they're at least having the conversation, or they're at least thinking about it. The one that comes to mind is punishment. Our
Hmm.
our kids, are we punishing our kids for losing or for not doing a skill correctly? But even the hardcore punishment people they think about that a little bit before they start dishing out the line drills or whatever. And it's not just that one; it's a lot of different stuff.
Oh, I do have one story. So I in the fall, I've always thought about how do I tell kids they've made and haven't made the program, you know. And so in my kind of vulnerable moment here, because it's constantly something I'm struggling with. How do I do that better, you know? And of course, we've all gone through different iterations. I put out there that I tried this little thing where I did a form and I asked the kids if they wanted to be spoken to in person or called or emailed or whatever. I think it was actually Michael Hawk that his comment still haunts me, but probably a lot of comments of his still haunt people. But he just said, yeah, that's probably great because I'm sure most 14-year-olds would be very happy not to have a face-to-face conversation with an adult. And so would you let them out of a test if they wanted to? If they wrote that on a sheet of paper, would you say that you don't have to write this paper, this week? So I kind of thought long and hard about that, and I may go back to just straight up face-to-face, having difficult conversations with young adults that need to happen, you know. And so that was a real moment where I thought, hey, maybe this is something I would like to do. And other people kind of pile on like, hey, I really like this. They're tagging people. And in my own back of my mind, it's like, that's a cop out, you know, and I need to do a better job with it. So Till's trying to find a way to, you know, face some of the difficult things that I have to do as a coach and the growth of young people.
Yeah, I'm kind of dreading that day and looking forward to that day at the same time because we just don't have enough bodies yet. But I'll probably be posting looking for ideas when that time comes.
Well, I think I've decided there's probably
Yeah,
nothing quite like the personal conversation.
I've been taking questions there more often, even if I don't put it into the big group, a side group or something.
Hmm.
Just things I've been thinking about, and it does take a little bit of vulnerability. I mean, you have to be open to comments from everywhere and everybody. It does make you think, so that's for sure.
Well, it's that trite phrase, we want our kids to be vulnerable and be open to criticism and change, and it's easier said than done for us adults, right?
We're getting kind of close to our time, Brian. What else can you leave us with? What else are you wishing that people you could tell people, or what you'd like them to know, or what's next?
Well, again, I just want people to continue to use VCT to obviously um, try to develop those relationships that can't be developed in person, but also reach out and use it to meet people, in person and go watch their practices and put out that you're going to be in St. Louis next week and you would love to go meet some folks and, where you create physical meetups and develop, you know, there's no replacement for that in-person mentoring and relationship. And, obviously it's there to enhance the conversations and things, but I really love the fact that I've been able to meet so many of these folks in person that I might never. And so I cherish that, and I'll continue to use VCT at least to grow my own personal relationships in that way.
Yeah, it's a great venue, and it's I've seen a lot of groups that you can tell it's a great venue because it's grown and because people say, hey, you got to check this place out. And so the openness of the coaches there and the sharing that goes on is what drives it, because if it wasn't offering value, people wouldn't be there. And so now it's a question of, okay, what other things can we do? And then of course dealing with all of the change that we are going to have to deal with this year and next year probably, as well as we continue to kind of try to figure out how to live in a different world, is going to be it's good to have a place to either vent or look for help or just connect.
Well, I wouldn't have met you without it, Steve, and certainly not BJ. So that's been pretty cool.
I just looked up the number of high schools in the United States is about 21,000. So if you think, you've got 24,000 coaches out there, probably most high schools have at least heard of it or have a chance to have heard of this group.
Well, and I'm still shocked at how many people are like, yeah, I'm in, small town Minnesota and coaching an eighth grade team. And I heard about this group. Someone told me I needed to join. I was a player and really struggling to figure out how to give back. And, I hope USAV and other folks are listening to all these things. And, there's a real need for mentorship. That's where the failing is happening, I think. Education's important, but direct mentorship, someone you can trust to go to one-on-one, is really important.
I think the other thing that's interesting about it is being mentored. I had a conversation at our get together last week, and there's a young club director there talking, and my assistant coach was with me. He's actually the head girls coach at our high school, and he's 20 and I'm 66. And she looked at us, and first of all, she thought father and son. I'm like, I would be a really old father, but okay. And then we started, and she just straight up said, "How do you deal with the age difference?" And I said, "Well, that comes from respect. I learn a lot from him. He's a player. He's a current player, or has played recently. He grew up in, he's a Colorado Springs guy, so he knows he knows a lot about the game." And I said, don't assume that an older coach isn't open. You'll get them, and if you do, you'll probably get a 22-year-old that's not open. It's not an age thing. It's a respect thing. It's a learning thing, and I think that's VCT's taken kind of those elements and reduced them quite a lot. But it was interesting to have somebody go, like, boy, that's really interesting that you two can work together. I'm like, yeah, well, there's a little age difference, but who cares?
Well, I know, we share a lot of Vern Gambetta stuff. I don't even know him. He's a prominent strength and conditioning coach as well, and he's probably about, I think, over 70 now. But that's his big mantra, is like, if I could go back 50 years and slap myself, I would certainly do that, right? So just the continuous learning process and how to best engage people in that's a constant. This is a humble.
It's time for me to get back on the
profession.
road, Steve. You want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, no, thanks, Brian, for spending some time with us and to to get us a little more insight into VCT and also what it's like to be not in the U.S. as a coach and in an interesting environment. So I appreciate that a lot, and we're going to try to figure out what to do with our little thing here to make it better, help make a connection. For me, the one thing I got out of it is trying to find opportunities to mentor more. And that's something I got to put on my list of goals for the upcoming years, to find an opportunity to maybe reach out to a middle school coach or to a program that's looking for some help and find those opportunities both through VCT and otherwise. So thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for being with us. And BJ, thanks for connecting on the road. Hopefully you'll continue. The glow of last night for you Wisconsin folks is well deserved.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It was a pleasure.
Good time last
Thank
night.
you very much.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks,
so
Brian. Take care.
we'll be back hopefully next week, and we'll see. Maybe with the holiday, we'll take a little time off, but we're looking forward to doing more of these. And if you have any ideas, let us know, including people who are watching in the comments 3 days later. Put something in the comment like, here's what I'd like to see, or who I'd like to see, and we'll see what we can do. So
Maybe
with
we
that,
could reach out to a young guest on VCT, or a young person saying, hey, we'd like to have you on. Bring your questions. That might be a neat
Yep.
conversation.
Yep, we'd love to do that. So, well, thanks anyway. I'm going to hit the outro and have a good evening, Brian.
You as well. Thank you.